Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. Welcome back to Paris History, Avec a Hemingway, and today I'm back with Claudine, and we are talking about the paintings of Notre Dame, and I'll let Claudine take it from here.
Yeah, and these are some very specific paintings, and if you were lucky enough to be in Paris in July this year, you could see these until we get to see them back inside the cathedral in just 5 months.
That's so exciting. We've been waiting so long.
Oh, I know. I can't believe it's already 5 months. So exciting. So these are very specific paintings. This was the paintings that in the 17th and 18th century, they were created under the Goldsmith Guild of Paris. They donated a large painting to Notre Dame, and these were known as the Les Mays. And Les Mays is because they were given on the 1st of May almost every year between 1630 and 1707, with the exception of the years 1683 and 1694. But this tradition goes back to the 15th century because in 1449, the goldsmiths donated a tree covered with ribbons that was planted in the front of the altar and later in front of the rood screen of Anne of Austria. However, in the 17th century, they decided they wanted to do something much larger and more magnificent there in the cathedral. So the Goldsmith Guild of Paris dates back to 1482. They were the companions of the May. They combined to create the Conference of Saint Anne and Saint Marcel. But by 1620, Anne of Austria was named the president of the guild, and from 1604 to 1608, they created 2 small paintings known as the Petite Mays that hung in the Tabernacle of Notre Dame. In April of 1630, a larger donation was decided on that would include a towering painting. Each year, a different set of these 2 masters of the Brotherhood selected the painter a year in advance, and the leaders of Notre Dame selected the theme. A sketch was then presented to the leaders and to the church, and if approved, they would then have a year to complete this masterpiece. The leaders also selected the size of the painting, which was on average 15 by 11 feet. Huge.
Definitely. That's like incredible. Wow.
Yeah, very large. But the commission also included a sketch, 2 reductions of the painting, and the final canvas. At the time, the art, stained glass, and sculptures in church basically are more important, especially on the facade, were to teach the people the stories of the Bible, because people didn't know how to read for the most part. That is how they would get the information, especially when you look at the facade of a church. Most of them, especially like at Notre Dame, the center door has the story of the Last Judgment. So it's supposed to scare everybody, scare them straight as they go inside the church. So these paintings became an intersection of the Word of God, image, and meditation. The churches we've talked about before really were the very first museums. You didn't have, the Louvre didn't open until the end of the 18th century. So to see art and for all these artists to contribute, the churches really were the kind of the first place to see that. The Catholic Church also had so much money, they were able to establish this massive collection and to kind of show it off. And this is why I always tell people, when you come to Paris and to France, don't ever pass a church by. If you have time, pop inside and just look on the walls, because you can find some of the greatest artists in French history hanging in these churches for absolutely free, and it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, definitely take the time to see. Like, churches are all like museums. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah, and I love it. So the maze included a collection of 76 paintings between, like I said, 1630 and 1707. Those 2 years, 1683 and 1694, they didn't do it because of budgetary issues. And also there was a famine at the time. So, probably shouldn't be spending money on art. At one time, they were all in Notre Dame, all 76 of them, which would have been amazing to see. The themes from the 1630s to the 1670s were on the Acts of the Apostles. And then from 1670s to 1707, which was the last, was based on the gospel. Each year, the paintings were accompanied by a poem and a sonnet and a wish for the king, which is pretty cool. After 1655, an explanation of the paintings were also written and sold, and I really wish I could get my hands on one of those. And trust me, I looked on eBay to see if I could find any, but no such luck. Today, the paintings are scattered throughout France because there's 76 of them. Definitely wouldn't fit into the cathedral now. I have a mission. I want to go see them all. And I really wanted to go see where the bulk of them are, more of them than are in Notre Dame. And that, of course, that museum, when I just looked, is closed for months. So there goes that idea. But when,
Oh man. Wait, when does it reopen?
huh? I
When
don't
does
know, but because they don't even have an actual website. It's like the city's website, and they have like a tab, and it just says, closed for some work. And then I sent them an email and a message on their Facebook page, and still nothing.
we have to call them?
I know. I'm like, dude, I'm just gonna go up there and bang on the door. But in when the Notre Dame opens on December 8th, all 13 paintings, the 13 maze that were in there before the fire will return to the different chapels than they originally were, and they'll all be hung on the west walls. In the north of France, this is the one I really want to go see, the Musée Beaux-Arts. In Arras, there are 14 in the Salon de Maze, and the picture I saw on their Facebook page showed them taking them down to move around things in the room. I'm like, come on! I should have gone when I saw. I've been looking at that for years. I should have gone. So teaches me a lesson. The Louvre has 7, but only 2 are on display. And the other 18 are scattered throughout churches and museums in France, with the exception of one that's in England. Give it back to us. I don't know why,
Interesting.
I don't know why it's in England. I'm going to find out why, and then I'm going to tell them they need to send it back. But of the themes in the 76, the life of Christ is featured in 22 of the paintings, St. Paul in 18, and St. Pierre in 16. And we'll go over what all of them are in the next episode. But what would happen is they would have an entire year to create this painting. And then each year at midnight on April 30th, the painting was hung in the chapel of St. Anne. St. Anne was the mother of the Virgin Mary. And she is also the patron saint of grandmothers. So I love her. But normally when you see St. Anne in Paris or in France, it's actually referring to more of the Queen, Anne of Austria. So there's a street, Rue Saint Anne, that's over in the second, that's really known for all of its fantastic Asian restaurants. But it's not named for the actual saint. It's the Rue Saint Anne because of Anne of Austria. But she wasn't a saint.
I didn't know that. We go there all the time.
Yeah, it's a great little street. That's the first street I stayed on when I first came to Paris. I stayed in an Airbnb there. At 10 a.m. on May 1st, the paintings were then removed and hung near the statue of the Virgin on the rood screen that stretched across the center of the church. Later, after that screen was removed, it was hung on the pillar. It remained on that pillar until the 1st of June, and they would then move it high above the nave. At one point, all of these were in there, as I said, I just am dying. But the artists were chosen from the Royal Academy. Many of them were given this as an opportunity to showcase their art and be put on permanent display long before there was the museums. At first, they wanted mostly unknown painters, but once the Academy was created in 1648, the royal artists were looked at first. Charles Lebrun, who created the Academy, painted his very first Lemais at just 28 years old, his second in 1651, and both of them are in Notre Dame, or will be. Charles Lebrun, of course, was an amazing artist. He might be better known as the decorator of Versailles, though. The reason Versailles looks like it does is because of Charles Lebrun and also the Galerie des Palais in the Louvre. He did all of that.
We love him for that.
Yeah, he's pretty great. Amazing painters of the day, including Lebrun, were also Jean-Baptiste Champigny, Noël Coypel, Eustache Lesueur, just a few of the names. Lubin Boin was received between 1645 and 1655 in order to do 19 paintings by the canon Michael Lamarcel. And those weren't just the Lemais, they were other paintings that were in there. And then he was also given the commission to create a set of tapestries that we're going to tell you more about next week. But in all, 60 artists for the 76 years were selected, 12 of which did 2 separate years, and one, Aubin Vouet, painted 3 of the years. The War of Succession and the Restoration of Notre Dame by Robert de Cotte ended the yearly maze and much of the decoration that filled the church. And then eventually the Goldsmith Guild was dissolved in 1732. But this really was like the Guild of Goldsmiths. Like it was like all of those goldsmiths. Now, there's so many, you'd think there must have been a ton of goldsmiths here in the city. Now they probably have the eyeglasses guild, and because there's like 1,000 eyeglasses stores here. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah, they're everywhere.
There's like 2 on my street. Like, who needs that many eyeglasses?
They're blind here.
They're blind, yeah. During the Revolution, the church fell out of importance, and as they had been tightly aligned to the king, Notre Dame became the Temple of Reason and a storage facility. On December 16, 1793, all the paintings were removed from the cathedral and deposited to the depot of the Petit Augustin before they were then moved over to the newly opened Musée Central des Arts, otherwise known as the Louvre. The collection of Notre Dame was then sent to either Versailles or to the Musée de Monument, created by Alexander Lenoir in June of 1798, where a few were restored, but they all stayed until 1802. On August 15th, 1801, which also happens to be his birthday, Napoleon and Pope Pius VII came to an agreement with the Treaty of the Concordat, which was ended with the 39 articles, returning the church to the Holy See and more of an involvement of the government, including the government, aka Napoleon, got to choose the leaders. Many of the priests of Paris refused to sign this agreement, which saw them all sent off to a very early retirement by Napoleon. But this act thankfully returned the art to Notre Dame in 1802, but sadly, some of the things that were taken out were either sold or lost and destroyed. Napoleon had also added 5 paintings to Notre Dame that he, quote unquote, liberated from Italy, and it all were returned in 1815 to the places he took them from. The access chapels in the back of the church in 1818 were then moved around, and the paintings were given a more permanent position until another favorite architect of mine, Eugène Viollet-le-Duc, and Lassus was selected in 1845 to restore the cathedral that was so badly damaged. And at one point, the government tried to sell off Notre Dame for the stones. Like basically, they were trying to sell off Notre Dame for parts.
Can you imagine? That's insane.
Crazy. But no, there was no takers. Which
God.
is just
Literally.
Could you imagine walking by and just seeing this big, for sale sign on Notre Dame?
Like, want to buy some rocks.
Yeah. Under Viollet-le-Duc, though, he removed all of the paintings. 42 paintings in total were in the cathedral because he didn't think they would go with the painted murals on the chapels he created. He later brought 13 back. Those 13 are the ones that we still have in there today. But the paintings are mostly forgotten about during the Revolution and Viollet-le-Duc. And so until 1940s, when a gentleman named Pierre-Marie Ozat brought them back to light in a book that he wrote that gave a renewed interest to all of them. In 1947, he did a very deep inspection and studied the interior life of the cathedral. And all of the paintings were then displayed at the Sorbonne at a special exhibition that they had. Oh, I wish I could have been there for that. But in 1949, he also brought four maize back from the Louvre, the 1635, 43, 49, and 1651. And he ended up putting those back into the church. He also had added plaques into all of the chapels that gave the description of everything. I'm sure they've been updated since by the time we got to 2019, but the plaques that were in there before the fire were some of the best that I've ever seen in a church. I had basically did like, I took 1,000 pictures and filled notebooks with this information because it had everything like who did the stained glass, who designed it from most of it, a lot of them were from the designs of Viollet-le-Duc, what, Glazier did them, who the statues were dedicated to, who they were by, the paintings, everything. They were fantastic. I spent so much time doing that, and now they're changing all of it.
Well, now you can learn it all again.
I know. Well, some of the stuff like the chapels themselves with what's painted on the walls will still stay the same, but they're changing the names of all the chapels, which we'll have to go into on another episode. But in 1963, 14 of the maize were in the church for the 800th anniversary. And then in 1983, the Eustache Lesueur May that went to the Louvre for exhibition, but never left. Within the Louvre, they have 8 in the collection. Only 2 are on display. Coypel's Saint James the Greater led to his martyrdom, and Lesueur's La Predication of Saint Paul. The other 6 are in such a horrible state, and you could see pictures of them on the Louvre website if you do a deep dive on them. Really, really horrible state of affairs. So, and I was always kind of bummed out that they didn't have more of those on display because I need to see them all. But then when I looked them up online, I was like, oh, they didn't look so great. They look pretty bad, but hopefully they'll get them fixed. But the ones that everything that was in Notre Dame on April 15th, on the night of the fire, majority of the art was protected in the side chapels, so they were really able to avoid the direct flow of water, except for the ones in the transept. But it was the humidity of the water sitting in the cathedral for hours and days later that started to damage the paintings. So a lot of these paintings, and next week we'll really go deeper into the actual restoration of the paintings, and that work and what they do is really fascinating. But because the support that they're on, kind of the stretchers on the back of the painting are wood, and you just had all that humidity in the church, and it was warm at the time. It definitely did some damage to the paintings, but luckily none of them were, sprayed with painting or with water, sorry. But the night of the fire, they only took 2 of the paintings out. Everything else was left in there. And next week, we'll tell you all about those. But if you are listening to this now, until July 21st at the Gobelins, which is in the 13th, it is the Mobilier. It is where they do the restoration of tapestries and carpets. And it's also where they hold the furniture they use into like the presidential palace and all these other places. This place normally is not open to the public unless they're doing a special exhibit. And right now you could go in there and see all of the 13 lamés that have been restored, plus more of the paintings that have been restored, and a few other amazing things I'll tell you about next week. But I want to tell you now to make sure you go because it's only there till July 21st, and then you'll have to wait to see it in Notre Dame. But if you're not going to be here and you're trying to avoid the mess that is the Olympic setup, then you could check just yesterday I did for my live Sunday YouTube, I did a visit there and I take you into the exhibit and I show you and tell you about all of the paintings. So I will put a link on my website so you could watch it. if you can't make it. But if not, book your ticket because actually it's a great time to come to Paris because the hotels are practically trying to give away the rooms because the lodging is down 60% for a summer because of the Olympics.
Yeah, where are all these Olympic people staying is my question.
Well, I think part of the problem is because there is, as we've talked about, so many Parisians that are like, I'm going to leave and make a bunch of money on my apartment. Well, I think the people that were smart did it really early, got the bookings, but most people I know that just tried to do that and put them up on, Airbnb or wherever 2 months ago, nothing is happening. And I read a article yesterday in the paper about how this really small boutique hotels have like nobody in July and August. They have zero reservations. So it's pretty horrible and it's pretty sad. Part of it is bad because you had all these people that thought they were going to just make this big, huge, greedy money grab because it's the Olympics, and now that's kind of backfiring.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I mean, like you said, I think a lot of people did it way in advance and now they're like, where, I mean, and these poor boutique hotels too, like that's a big
Yeah.
part of their income.
Yeah, and also they places like museums like the Louvre, in this article, another article I read was talking to museums and people in London, and they said that the big museums actually had half of the attendance, 50% of the normal attendance for the summer during the Olympic Games in London, because the people coming, that's not what they're coming for. They're coming, and it's so expensive. It was so expensive the tickets are insanely expensive. Um, Flights are crazy expensive, and the lodging when they booked it was really expensive. Like all those people should cancel it and book now again with a different hotel. But I think a lot of people are like, they're coming here for the tickets and the events that they have, and they leave because it's crazy. So, everybody's been talking about how horrible it's going to be. I kind of don't think it's going to be, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
I think we'll be surprised, honestly. But guys, we'll keep you updated and make sure you head over to ClaudineHemingway.com and tune in next week for part 2 of this session. Thanks for listening today, guys. If you're interested in learning more about Claudine, her tours, history, and the beautiful photographs that she posts all over Instagram, tune into her website, ClaudineHemingway.com.